in other places that I've traveled and women that I've worked with and talked with, they have a similar feeling of like sometimes not feeling welcome, which perplexes me because it's such a loving sport of being in tune with yourself and with the ocean. And for me, where does the divide come that like in tune with the ocean, in tune with myself, but not in tune with another? And that third element I feel like is the most important because that's the one that applies to life when we get back on land. Are you ready, boys? Start swimming.
That's Leah Dawson. I'm Jamie Brisick, and this is Soundings, brought to you by the Surfer's Journal. The Journal is a member-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Outerknown, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. More like a book than a magazine, the Journal delivers 136 pages of independent storytelling every 8 weeks, covering the people, culture, travel, and art of surfing. To learn more and to subscribe, please visit surfersjournal.com. This episode of Soundings is presented by Costa Sunglasses. If you're anything like me and you spend lots of time around the water, then you know just how important it is to have a good pair of shades. And since 1983, when a group of intrepid outdoorsmen set out to make sunglasses that could stand up to the harsh environments they regularly encountered, Costa remains the choice in eyewear among those committed to life on the water. So whether you're diving in, climbing a board, suiting up, sliding one, leaning back, or all the above, head to costadelmar.com to grab your pair and to see what's out there. I first met Leah Dawson at the 2011 Quicksilver Pro, held in Long Beach, New York. She was a cinematographer, or a filmer, as we unromantically call it. Hard-working, gregarious, a bright light. I had no idea how fabulous a surfer she was, not until I saw her clips on the gram. Leah's approach is grounded in freedom of expression and dance, with nods to the surfers who have informed her wave-riding odyssey, Rell Sunn, Margo Oberg, Jericho Poppler, and Lynne Boyer, to name but a few. She rides all manner of surf craft, most of it shaped by her longtime boyfriend, Alex Lopez, son of Jerry. Leah grew up in Florida and moved to Oahu to attend a University of Hawaii, where she earned a BA in creative media in 2008. She is the co-founder of Salty Sensations, in which she and her partners, Kassia Meador and Makala Smith, host surf retreats at select spots worldwide. She's also a co-founder of Changing Tides Foundation, a woman-led organization that celebrates diversity and inclusivity. Leah believes the ocean has great powers to connect, heal, and enlarge us, which is to say that she's something of a surf activist. Leah and I spoke at my little rented studio on the North Shore, a stone's toss from V-Land. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. Leah, my first question is, why does surfing and being in the ocean feel so good?
Why does it feel so good? It allows your mind to quiet down for a bit, or sometimes it allows it to race and then it's there to catch your tears. There's something very natural about being in the ocean and coming back to feeling human again, which I think a lot of our world and our daily life in this modern time is a distraction from what it is to be human.
Yes.
And it's easy to get caught up in the technological busyness of everyday life. But there's something that washes over us in the ocean that seems to bring back that levity and bring back that feeling of connection with ourselves. I don't know any surfer that doesn't feel some sort of connection with the ocean, because you have to have a connection with the ocean if you're surfing. Mm-hmm. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
And if you're having a connection with the ocean, then you're learning this language that the earth is speaking, and you're tapping into that. And that's something that I don't know, I feel like is important as a human experience for us to get in the flow with how the earth moves, whether it's through growing food, whether it's through catching water, or these basic things of living that I think we've digressed from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It sort of counters our screens. It's almost the opposite of being plugged into all the technology that we are. Can you remember, you grew up in Florida, can you remember the first time you really felt the pull or the draw of the ocean where you went, this is for me?
This is really cool. Yeah. I remember being on the front of my dad's boards. Like, that's the earliest memory of the ocean that I have, is like just bouncing on the front of my dad's board. Him taking me surfing, and they told me that I could swim before I could walk. So I was a swimmer from the start and loved the ocean. And then I think growing up in Florida and on the beaches of Florida, is warm water is really friendly for kids, and it's really enjoyable to cool off from the hot sun and be in the ocean. So I was always drawn to it from an early age, but it definitely continued to my awe for the ocean and love for the ocean. I think definitely exponentially multiplied when I moved to Hawaii to go to school and started learning more and more about the greater life that is around surfing. Growing up, it was mostly just a sport. And then when I moved to Hawaii, I learned that it's a spirituality.
Yeah. It's so interesting that, because having surfed for most of my life, I've realized that there are geographical places that sort of draw more from you, and you can shape your whole life around the ocean. And it's almost related to wave quality. If there's,
sure.
I live in LA, the waves are not so good a lot of the time. And I lived in Australia at one point, and everything revolved around surfing because I was in Sydney and there were great waves all the time. And then in LA, I came back and I was disappointed. Being in Hawaii, what brought you here? What were your early impressions?
Sure.
How did that whole Hawaii open up for you?
My brother was stationed at Pearl Harbor. He was in the Navy. And so when it came time to apply for colleges, I applied to UH and a few other California schools. I knew that I wanted something different than Florida. And I got into UH and not into the other schools, thank goodness. And I begged my parents to let me go. And I just felt like there was a magnet drawing me here. Yeah.
What were you studying at U of H at this time?
I started out studying physics, and I nearly flunked out. I was a straight A student in high school. I loved school. And I tried to be a science major, and I could not cut it. And so I stopped doing that and studied creative media, which felt a lot more in tune with myself. And learned the basis of filmmaking and storytelling and camera, just how to frame pictures and different rules that you could probably learn on YouTube within, a matter of a week. You could probably get the education that I got in 4 years, but that's how it is these days.
And what year was that you were?
That was 2004 to 2008.
Okay, no, that makes sense because, it's interesting because I think of you first and foremost as a great surfer, but the first time I met you, I want to say it was at the Quicksilver New York event.
Yep,
and you
that's
were
right, I
and you were working.
Yep.
Maybe it wasn't even the WSL yet. It was the ASP.
Still. Yep.
And you were running camera.
Yeah.
And I saw that I saw you on it and doing it, right in it. And I had no idea. And then sort of a few years later, I started seeing clips of you surfing, and I went, oh, that's the same girl. She tears it up. But when I saw you, you were so in the behind the scenes, the sort of making of it all, right, that I didn't realize that you had this great surf skill.
Yeah, I think I think each fed each other a bit. I got a job working as like a production assistant on a little production that was going on, and Mike Prickett, who's an amazing water cinematographer, He was working on that job, and I was basically his assistant for that job. So we became friends, and then I graduated college and was needing work, and that was the time where it was before WeTransfer existed. It was before like any cloud existed, and so he had just started like building out a website where he was putting up like B-roll clips for sale. And so that was my first job out of college, was like transcoding and uploading all these like clips that Mike Prickett had shot on beautiful 16 millimeter and just like the iconic shots of Andy and Kelly, and just really, really cool. Now that I look back on it, it was like, that was definitely a great honor. And then Mike got me a job right out of the chute on the Triple Crown in 2008.
Okay.
Or 2009, I think, was the first time I worked it. And as soon as I got behind the camera, it was like I knew how to do it already. I knew what a good frame looked like, I think probably from college. But I think also from a lifetime of watching sports on TV. I'd always studied sports on TV for hours. I would watch every basketball game. I grew up in Orlando, so I was a big Magic fan. So I knew every player and the ins and outs of the whole game. And I wouldn't miss a game. So I think I had a lot of the visual eye that it takes to frame and to watch surfing. And then I knew kind of how to predict what the surfers were going to do, which I think is also essential.
For sure.
But the hardest part of camera operating is paying attention for 8 hours or 10 hours, or depends on how long the event goes that day.
Right. Kind of a marathon on your brain.
It's a marathon on the brain. Yeah, it's not very physical. It is, you're just standing there. But to not allow yourself to get distracted and to not allow yourself to get exhausted is, I think, the biggest challenge of it. But the art of it's easy.
How do you, so it's interesting that, because I face the same dilemma in my daily work, wanting more sort of units of attention and wanting more concentration and not falling to the side. How do you do that? How do you enhance that? How do you bring out the best?
It's more so like putting the phone way away so you're not distracted by getting a text or, you know, or going by that. I learned that early on. They encourage you not to have your phones on, obviously. But it's really just, good waves really help.
Yeah.
Really, really, really help.
Because you're thrilled to be watching.
Yeah, exactly. You're a spectator anyways.
Yes, exactly.
When the waves are bad, it's really hard. You just have to stay focused, and it moves so fast that you can't get caught up. Like, you can't make a mistake and then dwell on that mistake, because you're in the now.
Sure.
And it's moving on whether or not you're along for the ride or not. So
it's almost like you're surfing.
Yeah, it's almost like you're surfing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be there. And you can't let, there's no time to like ponder different thoughts or get lost in your own head, because there's so much happening that it's really awesome to have something to hyper focus on.
Yep.
And I definitely feel mentally drained at the end of the day, not necessarily physically drained. But mentally it's like, whew, did a big brain workout.
Yeah, sure. So in your years of running camera, of being a camera operator, of being a DP, cinematographer, whatever word you want to give it, what has been the most amazing, memorable thing you've witnessed through that viewfinder?
Definitely Katie Simmers saying pipelines for the fucking girls. I was live when she said that, and like just lightning struck through my cells. There's been a lot of moments where I've gotten goosebumps and gotten just the feeling that I'm sure a lot of people get when they're watching things live. But to see the performance that the girls put on that day at Pipeline, Katie took the words out of my mouth all day watching them go at it right next to the guys, as entertaining as the guys.
Yeah, for sure.
As good as the guys.
Yeah.
I was sitting there like filming all day, kind of pissed off that it took that long.
Yeah.
I was mad.
Yeah.
And like kind of shaking. And then she said that. I'm like, yes, she said that.
Yeah.
And no one can ever take that back.
No, it was so perfect.
And WSL could either fine her or they could embrace it. And they had to embrace it.
Yes.
And they did.
Yes.
And I'm really happy that they did, because it was a moment in history that I feel like changed the trajectory of women surfing forever.
For sure. If ever there was a moment that called for a 4-letter word, it was that.
It was that. And coming from an 18-year-old kid who, like, you know, is soft-spoken and so unique in her delivery in life.
For sure.
To have the wherewithal to... She was very conscious of what she was saying. It didn't slip out.
Yes.
You know? And I think that was a sentiment that all the girls had been feeling all day.
Yeah.
And previously, while they were sitting on the beach watching the guys get good waves, you know?
For sure.
And the days leading up to it. All they wanted was the chance.
Yes.
And then they got the chance and they hit it, the home runs, all day long.
Yeah. Let's talk about this. Why did it happen? Why did it take so long to happen to begin with? And I want to just hear everything because having lived in Hawaii for a long time, seen many seasons on the North Shore, winters on the North Shore, watching the girls. I want to everything you have to say about it. I want to hear.
How can we unpack it?
Yeah.
Well, I moved out here in 2004, and that was, I think, the year after they made Blue Crush and filmed Blue Crush.
Okay.
And if you haven't seen Blue Crush, see the first Blue Crush first. The surfing movie that Rochelle Ballard and Bill Ballard made of women surfing that like was the precedent to the pipe event that we're talking about. So the Hollywood version of Blue Crush, they bought the name off of Rochelle and Bill for the movie.
Okay, I didn't know this.
And the movie is about a female surfer at Pipeline.
Yeah.
In a contest.
Yep.
There was no contest at Pipeline for girls.
Yeah.
But I was just talking to Rochelle yesterday. Rochelle's been a very dear friend of mine for more than half my life now. When I was fresh out of college, we became good friends, and I moved in to her spot that she had at Sunset Beach, and she kind of took me under her wing and showed me a lot. And that was as she was retiring.
Okay.
And you'll have her on one day, and she can tell more of the story because it's hers to tell and not mine. But I've really come around to her story with the recognition of just how vital it is that, like, what she did was so prolific and underappreciated in the surf industry and surf culture as a whole, and even by female surfers, because we didn't know what was going on. Until like 2006, 2007, there was Tahiti was on the map for the girls, and Cloudbreak was on the map for the girls. Pipeline wasn't there yet. But the girls had the Triple Crown in Hawaii. So there was a lot of, powerful events.
Yeah.
When it came time, for some reasons that I just learned yesterday, the girls' events got pulled in Tahiti and Fiji.
Okay.
Because it wasn't safe. Because the girls didn't know, most of the girls didn't know how to surf these waves because they never really had the opportunity. And back then, you could take yourself on a surf trip to these places. It probably cost you a pretty dime, and money wasn't going around as flourishingly as it has. It kind of ebbs and flows for sure.
Yeah.
Money in the surf industry.
Yeah.
But that being said, not many girls had any experience in these waves. And I remember early on in my in my filming career at the Triple Crown, anytime a girl would pull back off of a wave, the director of the show would go, pull back. I'm going to count the pullbacks. And he's like, that's why they canceled the event in Tahiti, because all the girls kept pulling back. And yeah, I get it. It's like such a dangerous wave, or when the criticality goes to that level, it is a matter of life and death sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I get that natural, like, if you don't quite have the technique, do you really want to send yourself over the ledge? But Rochelle made that technique. And she owned it. Like, she learned to drop in at pipe shooting for Blue Crush. I found, I have this hard drive that I was going through looking for some old footage, and I'm like, what's this Rochelle folder that I have on this old hard drive? And I look through, and it's like all of the water shots that they shot for Blue Crush.
Right.
Of her, like, taking off on crazy waves at pipe.
And you're referring to the Hollywood feature film, not the one she made with her, with Bill.
With Bill.
Was she stunt doubling, or was she playing herself in it?
She was stunt doubling.
That's what I thought.
For the main character.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And they ended up not using the waves of her at pipe because they weren't big enough. And she had gotten injured in one of the scenes where they collide. She actually got injured and had to get helivac'd.
Wow.
It was gnarly. And then they wanted bigger waves for the final scene. And so they hired a man to dress up in a bikini.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Do we know who this man is?
Yeah, Noah Johnson.
Oh, okay. I know Noah.
Yeah.
Noah's an Eddie winner.
Yeah, Noah's an Eddie winner. And so Noah did the final scene because Rochelle was injured. But looking back through this footage, like, I'm scanning all through the B-roll, and she made some crazy waves that never saw the light of day.
Huh.
And I'm going through, like, tears in my eyes going, Rochelle, like, why have I never seen this before? Like, you're my idol and one of my best friends, and I've had this hard drive with me for how many years? 15, almost 20 years. And I didn't know that I was sitting on the, like, best footage of a female surfer that had ever been shot. Or let's say most critical. Like, what we're seeing of the girl, it would have scored tens those days at pipe.
Right. So, and I know Rochelle, and I've watched her over the years, and she's fantastic. So this is in no way, all her skills speak for themselves. But was part of it the fact that maybe they cleared the lineup for for the shooting? Was it the thing of, like, the girls were never allowed to get waves because there were so many hungry men out in the water? Like, I guess going back to why it took so long. So Rochelle charged clearly, and we probably all knew that anyway. But what you're describing right now, what I'm gleaning is, like, here's a moment where probably the water was cleared, because there was this Hollywood production, and they cleared out the lineup.
Right.
So she was able to ride the waves that she would not have gotten on a typical swell with all the people.
Right. Yeah, exactly. She was given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And there's an iconic clip of her at backdoor, like, on a wave that would have scored a 10 on any of the contests.
Wow.
She gets dropped in on. And
incredible.
They both make the barrel.
Wow.
And at the end, he, like, comes back and, like, makes another bottom turn and then, like, fully clips her, and she eats it at the end. But that's what she was up against.
Yeah.
You know?
That's tough.
And there was talks about it of wanting to have a women's event, but not many women wanted to go. You know, besides Rochelle and Kayala and Kate Scarrett, I think a lot of women probably believed what I did, that, like, gnarly pipe was too gnarly, you know?
Yeah.
This is like staring you in the face.
Yeah.
But if you're told that you can't do something, then you're, like, you might believe it.
Yeah.
And over and over and over again.
Yes.
And I think girls, you know, starting in the 70s it's a common sentiment. I've heard it so many times, like, pipe's not for girls, you know? And it took 20 years. What took so long between Rochelle and Katie Simmers and Molly Picklum and Betty Lou? Like, where was that gap, and why did it take so long for us to see it? I truly think it's just the opportunity of being able to have the lineup more to yourself, and to be able to have a selection of the waves that you know are the good waves. Because it's all well and good to, like, go out there and sit there and spend 3 hours a session for a whole winter and maybe get a handful of waves and a lot of wipeouts because you're having to go on the subpar waves.
Yes, exactly.
And as a sustainable surfer, as a surfer that wants longevity, it's hard to, like, go put yourself in that arena and you know, have to face a lot of wipeouts, a lot of, like, hungry crowd vibes, where you could just go down the road and still surf great waves, and that'll push your surfing and whatnot. So I think that it was a mix between men not believing that women could do it, but also women not believing that they could do it. And that's where I found myself that day filming the pipe contest. I was mad at myself for believing that we couldn't do it. And I was mad at myself for not seeing that footage of Rochelle from 20 years ago doing it.
Yeah. Yes.
And I always knew and heard that she surfed big pipe, but I didn't see it with my own eyes. And I think that is a huge thing in representation, and why representation is so powerful for people, is that when we can see ourselves or someone relatable to ourselves doing something, it makes us believe that there's maybe a spot for us as well.
Yeah, for sure. Do you surf pipe?
I have a handful of times. I wouldn't say yes, though. We used to have the Women's Pipeline Pro, that Betty DiPolito, I think she was the first, I think maybe Joyce Hoffman was the first female surfer that surfed pipe. But Betty DiPolito was out there a lot too. And she used to have a contest, the Women's Pipeline Pro, that would go in, usually in March is when she'd get the permit, because the permit in February or in January wasn't available.
And you've won that
I the first year I did it, I won the longboard division and got second in the shortboard division. And I look back on some of the photos and just laugh because I was not getting barreled. But I did a helicopter on my longboard and got a 10. Like, not the 10 I'm looking for, but but I felt like the power of the wave for sure. The first year that it ran, it was actually in pretty decent surf. And God bless him, Larry Haynes sent me a clip of myself, the first, like, proper wave that I tried to go on at pipe. I'm stroking into it, looked like such a perfect wave, and as I'm starting to get over the ledge, I just freaked out and pushed the board to the side and got so pitched.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like went over the falls twice in the mix. And he's like, you're not going to do that again. It's safer just to go. Come on.
Right.
And you know, I did that contest for a handful of years, and each year we didn't always get good waves. It was, you know, later in the season, so sometimes there weren't any west swells. A lot of times it was like gums breaking, you know, right hand point break into the reef. But God, I loved it. The few times that I did have the lineup out there to myself, I was like, yeah, this place is amazing. There's feelings that you get out there that I haven't felt anywhere else. The pressure that you feel loaded on your body when you're coming off the bottom at that wave is unmatched. And especially if, like, the last time I surfed out there, I'd had like a tiny little tear in my thigh muscle. And I went out there and it was like my leg was being pulled apart on the bottom turn. Just the the energy that it took
Yeah.
pushing into the wave, and the energy that the wave is pushing back at you is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone, like, watching it doesn't do it any justice for understanding how it looks so scary. And then you're out there and it just exponentially becomes even scarier.
Yeah. I find that with the North Shore in general. You know, I remember being a kid and sort of growing up with the magazines and the movies
Sure.
and having this idea of it. And the first time, I think I can remember the first time I surfed Sunset and sort of jumping into the ocean, and just this ocean was just moving in a way that I'd never experienced. And it had that warm, frothy, salty stuff hitting me in the eyes, and just the current, kind of the rip current pulling me out. And it's heavier than it looks, and which is not what you'd kind of expect, because it already looks so heavy to watch it, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's an incredible sensation to feel the energy on the North Shore.
Yeah.
There's definitely places around the world that feel it, but it's that open ocean energy
Yes.
of swells that have traveled for thousands of miles combusting.
Yeah.
To me, it's just so fascinating that waves exist on
Yeah.
our planet.
Yeah.
And that reefs are there, and that these perfect, majestical, like, forms of energy allow us to ride them.
Yeah. No, it's really fascinating. You really feel it here on the North Shore. I mean, I remember the first few winters coming over, there would be a big swell, and you could feel it in the produce aisle at Foodland. Like, everyone was like on it in some weird way. Like, the energy shifted in some way, and waves were like slamming 3 tables in Sharks Cove, and you could see that, and it transmitted across into the land, and everyone, non-surfers, felt it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's just the energy transfer of waves crashing on the shore that really take. You see everyone at the beach, and they're just staring at the ocean, watching the ocean. I can sit there and watch the ocean for hours and feel like no time has passed. And I don't know if it's. I've read in a little bit about negative ions and how crucial they are to human health, but how frequently they're emitted in the ocean. I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Yeah. And do they? I haven't studied this, and I've always meant to. But the bigger the swell, the more negative ions floating around.
That's from my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. It's such a funny one, because it's so negative ion sounds like something negative, but it's actually positive and lifts your mood.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I've found myself really leaning towards and recognizing when I am in a place where I'm feeling very out of my element, i.e., feet not on the ground. Like, it definitely starts to get at me. I feel like my temper's a little shorter. I just don't have as much, like, patience for myself.
Yeah.
And then you get around, even in a shower, the bouncing water can relieve that and help calm us down and be a great source of healing energy.
Yeah.
But then you get to the real stuff and get on the shores. I was told by a Hawaiian long ago that where waves break on the seashore, it's really therapeutic to walk along the seashore, because it's the cleansing and the refreshing and bringing of new and letting go, releasing things and that don't serve us anymore, or asking for forgiveness for whatever it is, and allowing that seashore movement to be the cleansing, fresh start that I think is innate to life.
Yeah. I agree 100%. The one thing, though, that I've always found confusing, and I feel like I'm always trying to battle within myself and push away, is I've watched a lot of old surfers get bitter and curmudgeonly.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe it's because maybe it's something that favors youth and athleticism and
Sure.
physicality. And then when you're in midlife, you're losing that. And therefore your ego and your identity is based on tearing up waves. And then that's diminishing and you're getting depressed. But I definitely know a lot of angry, brittle, older surfers. And it's exactly the opposite of what you'd think a life in the waves would bring you.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting take on it because I've definitely seen and felt a lot of that. Maybe they've seen how crowded it's become.
Yeah,
and
that's
how
one,
and
for
how
sure.
much it's changed. But has it really? Like I've seen pictures of Malibu back in the 60s and it was just as crowded or more so as it is today.
Yeah.
I think it all kind of fluctuates and goes in waves. I've also met one who you've brilliantly interviewed, Jock. He's he's a great friend. I've been seeing him around for the last 20 years, and I think the thing that translates is that it's not about the maneuvers. It's not about the end goal of looking good. It's about the ride.
Yeah.
It's about that freedom of like gliding.
Yeah. No, Jock Sutherland is one of the great representatives of surfing in your later years. He's incredible.
He really is. And that's the joy that I hope to create when I'm in the water.
Yeah.
Like when he's in the water, the lineup feels happier.
Yes.
And more joyful.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to how we've gotten to a point where crowds can be kind of like there's a negative connotation or such a like competitive notion in a lot of crowds that like while it's the happy place for most everyone out there, it doesn't seem like it when you're out there.
I know.
What is that?
I don't know. Well, I think the numbers there has been a surge in popularity of surfing in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, I think the pandemic sort of brought in
Big time.
a lot of people that weren't there before. And then I think maybe the rules have changed. I mean, I grew up in the generation where it was very hierarchical in the sense of it was a combination of how good you stood on a board and how skilled you were as a surfer and sort of how frequently you were at the break or maybe even where you lived geographically. There was a localism thing. It's sort of like if you lived on that beach house, you were entitled to more waves just by virtue of that. And I'm not defending that in any way, but that's the rule. That was the code when I was growing up. And I think in the sort of post-COVID generation, it comes with the thing of no one has any more right to the surf than anyone else. And I think skilled surfers have a tough time with that because they're used to getting the waves that they want. And they still sort of do because it's hard to argue with, John taking off way too late on a backdoor wave. Who's going to drop in on that?
Right.
But I do think it's like disrupted the system that's been in place for a long time.
Yeah. But back then was the lineup like a kind of intense climate?
I mean, I think it depends on where you go. I mean, certainly the North Shore. And myself as like a haole from Los Angeles coming to the North Shore, yes. I mean, I was so aware of being the outsider and having to be respectful and kind of not catching eyes with a lot of the locals. And those were in some instances, there were locals who didn't necessarily surf great, but they were heavies and they were part of the community. And because they lived here and, this stretch right here, we're sitting near Sunset Beach, you had to show respect. And
of course.
And I guess I'm imagining, I don't live here. You would be able to comment on this better than myself, but I think that probably still exists here because that's just sort of how Hawaii works in general.
For sure. I think it's definitely, you see the people out there and they know where to sit.
Yeah.
They're going to catch the best wave of the set and you're going to obviously like get out of their way because they're, and that knowledge can't be faked.
Yep.
So I think it just demands respect.
Yes.
And I think here more than anywhere else in the world, the level of surfing of your average surfer is astronomically higher than other places.
Yes.
But in other places that I've traveled and women that I've worked with and talked with, they have a similar feeling of like sometimes not feeling welcome, which perplexes me because it's such a loving sport.
Yeah.
Of being in tune with yourself and with the ocean. And for me, where does the divide come that like in tune with the ocean, in tune with myself, but not in tune with another? And that third element I feel like is the most important because that's the one that applies to life when we get back on land.
For sure.
And that's really what I'm interested in is how much can we connect with each other as a surf culture to create perhaps a new vision for how lineups can be energetically.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about this. One comment I would say is, to my knowledge, you're mostly a free surfer, right? You have competed, but you're primarily a free surfer, and I think you're known as a free surfer, and I think you're known as an expressive surfer who's surfing outside the bounds of the competitive, judging criterion, let's say. Do you think if you were more chasing after a world title, let's say, you might have a different attitude?
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's hard to differentiate like practice over free surf if competition is on the mind. But I also am friends with the best female surfers in the world, and they don't act any different on most surfs. They're just out there shredding all the time.
Yeah.
And there's like not a lot of anxiousness or like my wave or whatnot. But I feel like that there's often like a general respect that people start identifying, she shreds. Okay, I'm going to let her go.
Sure.
In my time of surfing, I've noticed how lineups have become more respectful to women, especially if you assert yourself from the start. But even yesterday and the day before, I hesitated on one wave, and then it was like they were out for me. Every wave that I went for, they just went in front of me.
Wow. Which break?
At Rockies.
Okay.
And Rockies is a very high performance, high level surfing wave. But I found myself like just having to laugh it off because I know that women experience it so much. We get paddled around so much. Yeah. And we get told that we're kooks and that we're in the wrong. And, we do our best. Everyone's doing their best. Yeah. And that's something that we have to keep in mind is that everyone's doing their best out there. And surfing's a hard sport. It's really, really hard to get good at. Yeah. And it takes a long time. Yes. And so many sessions. Yeah. But if we don't bring each other along with it, then it is just a selfish sport. Yeah. But I've found if I'm out there surfing for myself and just surfing the way that my soul wants to, people are going to let me have the waves that I'm in position for. Yeah. And not try and skirt around me and whatnot. And even though I wouldn't say my surfing is as at all maneuver based, I would say it's completely based in feeling like you're flying. And an obsession of going really fast without doing much.
I like this. Let's get into this feeling of flying across a wave. Let's talk about style. Let's talk about wave riding approaches.
I think one of the most encouraging, like, game-changing things that was ever said to me was Albie Falzon, who made Morning of the Earth. I got to meet him the last time I was in Australia, which was 10 years ago. And I spent some time with him. And he said, I love simple surfing. Like, nothing is more beautiful to me than watching someone just stand there, go really fast, and do nothing on a wave, but to also do everything on the wave at the same time. You're in the perfect spot. And that really resonated with me because at that time, I was really diving into riding single fins of all different shapes and sizes, and riding logs. And I had let go of competing and I only competed really in longboarding, but I had let go of doing that. It wasn't serving me. It wasn't bringing me the happiness that I knew surfing was for me. And my mom always told me, she's like, Leah, like, you don't have to be a competition surfer to surf.
Did your mom surf?
She boogie boarded when I was growing up.
Okay.
My dad was more the surfer. Yeah, but they were both avid ocean lovers and incredible athletes. My mom was a slalom ski, like behind the boat water skier. When she was 16, she told her dad, I want to go 100 miles an hour behind the boat on a ski. And when she was 18, she went 80, and she's like, that's good. Wow. But she went 80 miles an hour on a slalom ski on the boat.
That's fast.
And then she later raced drag boats.
Wow.
Went 140 miles an hour on a drag boat that she owned. She loved it. Hard Luck Cowboy was the name of the boat.
And she danced, and does she still dance?
Yeah, she danced a lot. She was a baton twirler. She was very much in the arts. Not so much anymore. We'll still dance and groove around the kitchen when I'm home. But yeah, she was definitely a high-level athlete with a lot of poise and grace. And then I see footage and photos of my dad, and while I think of my dad just with this like bowed, like funny stance with his arms out to each side, like I see in the photo, I'm like, oh, that's how I hold my hands. Like there's so many really cool things that have translated that I have been totally not aware of. And then now that I'm 37, I'm bringing my attention to, and it is just so fascinating and cool and makes me feel so connected to my parents in different ways.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, it's interesting with style. I think genes do play a part, right? I mean,
I wouldn't have thought so, and then I've seen it so many times and with my own eyes that it's undeniable. Yeah.
And your sister is a ballet dancer.
Yeah, my sister is a ballet dancer and a banker now. She's brilliant. She kind of traded in the ballet shoes for a finance degree and has just taken it from there. But yeah, dancing is definitely still very much a part of her life. And I went to so many recitals and watched so many Nutcrackers and never quite understood the whole dance world. And I wish that I had paid more attention to the detail and maybe taken some of it myself, but I feel it coming through in me now. It's wild.
Because if I would say, it's so interesting that you should say that, because even if you weren't paying attention, it's like some osmosis hit you.
Totally.
Because you're one of the term balletic, however you pronounce that, you are probably embody that as much as any surfer I can think of. And I remember you'd posted something a while back about your sister being a dancer and how you really think of surfing as dance. And it was really beautiful, and I thought it described your surfing really well.
Yeah, it's a trip. I never really thought about surfing as a dance until maybe 10 years ago when I met Albie. And I really started to see how we can utilize extension and posture and body movement in ways that were unconventional to what we were seeing in most surf movies or, anywhere you go in surf lineups. And then I became just really interested in allowing my body to explore the way that it wanted to move. Now that I had spent years and years learning the techniques and the muscle memory and the ability to move your feet around in different places on different boards. There's so much like tiny little muscle memory movements that go into surfing that make it all look like you're not doing anything, but you're doing a lot.
Yeah. Do you think being a longboarder before a shortboarder might contributed to that? Because longboarding is so footwork based.
Longboarding is, yeah, I think so much of my surfing has its roots in longboarding and
I
footwork.
can see that. Yeah,
for sure. I grew up doing both because in Florida the waves were not often big enough to ride a shortboard. So if you wanted to surf all the time, you better ride a longboard. But not until I quit competing and started riding single fins did I really start understanding this grace of movement. It was always about attacking the wave instead of becoming one with it. And then once I got on different single fins and really started playing around with leading with our hips and utilizing our arms as elements of our dance movement and finding that feeling of flow. That's when I really started to feel like I was finding myself in the ocean. I didn't, if you asked me before I was 25 or even later, almost 30, like what my style was, I wouldn't have been able to tell you because I felt like I was just trying to do what everyone else was doing and trying to regurgitate.
Yeah.
And then it became more of like a soul-searching desire to want to see what it was that my soul wanted to do on waves without me telling it what to do.
Yeah, I like this. And how did you go about that? What was the process to sort of allow yourself this freedom when you were out in the surf?
I think mostly it came from boards and playing around on different equipment because every single board and also fin setup is going to make you look at the wave differently. Make you approach the wave differently.
Yeah, you have to be chameleon-like to adapt to each board.
And you're going to see different lines and want to do different maneuvers and feel different feelings. So for me, it was always being this like ride everything, like get on as many different boards as you possibly can and develop surfing techniques that apply to all of them and not just one type of surfing. And I think that exploration really led to just wanting to simplify surfing as much as possible, but also still push myself in bigger waves. But to me, it's about 4-second bottom turns and the ultimate highline.
Yeah. Going down that path and exploring that and going further and further into it, do you, when you say are working for the WSL, filming an event, do you ever look at the competition and the whole notion of the hierarchy of winning and just go, this is kind of just ridiculous and not what surfing means to me?
No, I think I've been such a fan of sport my whole life that I think I feel the nuance and the purpose of all of it.
Yeah.
Because I have some of my best friends in life from doing surf contests. And I think that competition to a certain extent is really healthy and has helped progression get to the point to where it is now. Do I identify myself with it? No.
Yeah.
But am I a fan of it? Yes. Especially when I have people to root for. And I like to root for everyone, but it's amazing when you personally know people and know their stoke and see them blossoming and allowing their surfing to come through. And it's wild because you can be the best surfer in the world and have a bad day.
Yeah.
And it's like out there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
And I've never really wanted that many, the criticality.
Sure.
Necessarily, and the in real time eyes on my surfing because in all truth, there's like good days and bad days. Like yesterday, I wiped out on 4 of the 5 waves and came in like with my tail between my legs, and it was not a big day. Just sometimes you get your butt slapped and you get humbled so quick. It's the constant humbling.
Yeah.
which is great because I feel like we need that in our world. Egos can get way out of hand, and it's not about us, you know. I think that surfing is the reprieve for so many of us, and that's what we realize is that, like, at the end of the day, it's not about us. But if we can utilize the joy that we gain and the power, the battery power charge that we get from the ocean, and go apply it to life and help make other lives a little bit lighter. You know, not everyone has the opportunity to go in the ocean.
Yeah,
or to go surf.
We're very privileged just being near it. Yeah.
So in that sense, like, we have to enjoy it for everybody.
Yeah.
And pass it forward and pass it along.
This is a perfect segue into your environmental activism work, etc.
Yeah. I think it's hard to be a surfer and not care about the environment because we're so immersed in it. But that being said, I feel like there's almost this, like, malaise that has grown over so much of our population, including myself, of kind of the doomsday feeling of, like, everything's messed up and we're just spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
But how do we stay active within that? How do we stay informed within that and grow beyond the malaise to actually activate and make changes? I've done some work with Surfrider Foundation, and they do a lot of work on the policy side of things. And I learned through them that it is through policy that big change is made. And so if we're going to make change outside of our small towns on a bigger scale, it has to be done through policy. So learning the ins and outs of how that goes, it's definitely hard to stay positive because of how much corruption there is within all levels of it. And that's unanimous, like, kind of across the world.
Yeah.
You know, like, a lot of the people that are in power are making decisions that aren't for the greatest good. But in surfing, we see it. We're immersed in the raw earth. And for me, it's been undeniable that we have an issue with pollution.
Yeah.
You know, like, when I was a kid, I found sea glass on the beach. A lot of it. But now that's changed. And now it's not glass that, like, when it breaks down isn't toxic. It's plastic that as it breaks down, it continues to break into smaller and smaller particles. It never actually goes away. And we're making this stuff at an ever increasing rate. Like, the biggest plastic factories just opened in the US. We pump out more, is it ethane? It's when they get natural gases, there's these cracking facilities, and the offshoot of what they're not using for the natural gas creates what the main ingredient for plastic is. And so as the boom in natural gases has gone up, and as the boom in us needing food to go all the time and all of these things, now we've created a system where the plastic is being produced at a higher rate than we can even consume it. But the consumption is like, it's not a paper bag. It can't, if you light it on fire, those particles are still going to go up and make it toxic in the air.
Yeah.
If we bury it, it's still going to disintegrate into trillions of little tiny pieces and then get into the water stream and then, you know, into our bodies and into every part of our earth. It's now penetrated. So to me, it's like, as surfers, how do we stand up against the injustice that's being done against our earth? there's so many injustices against people, let alone the earth. But I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so
I think they definitely go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because you want to be an optimist, but you also have to be a realist.
Mm-hmm.
Like in our day and age, if we're not paying attention to the realities, then it's just going to keep getting worse. And I don't want it to get worse.
Yeah.
You know, the earth is so special, and every animal that swims in the ocean or flies in the air, runs along the mountains, like it took so long for all of it to evolve. And then it's wild to be living in a generation where like all of it is really at a critical point of falling apart.
Yeah. You're making me feel real bad about my many drinking water that I'm holding up right now.
You know, in a lot of ways, there's no ways around it.
No, it's,
you know?
no, I was just going to say, the funny thing is, because everything you're saying resonates with me. And I typically have what you have over there, which is a Hydro Flask or a Yeti bottle.
Yeah.
And I have that. But I didn't bring it on this particular trip. When I went into Foodland yesterday, which is unto itself kind of terrible, I thought of all the waters available, I'm going to support the local brand.
Brand.
But of course, it's plastic, and it's it's everything terrible that you just described. So,
I think that we've gotten to a point where if we demonize ourselves for things that are out of our control, then we're not serving ourselves.
Yeah.
Because that plastic bottle was already made.
Yeah.
And so the system itself is broken. And I think that that's really what we're getting to is, yes, there's, 8 billion of us on the planet now? And that's 8 billion choices that are being made every day.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is no other option, then the system is screwed up.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what all of us are starting to really come to terms with is, okay, we know our system's messed up. How do we turn this ship around?
Mm-hmm.
How do we infiltrate with love and positivity and with like-mindedness for preserving our earth and humans as part of the earth? How do we do that? And how do we do it without anger?
Mm-hmm.
How do we do it without pointing fingers?
Yeah.
It has to be something that brings us together, and that people feel empowered by. Because, yes, information is definitely necessary. We need to be well-informed in order to fight the battles that we're up against. But we can't... I've seen in points of my life where I almost got, I wouldn't say depressed, but just down because I was thinking about this stuff so much.
Yeah.
And does that serve me?
Yeah.
But if I'm not thinking about it, then am I helping combat it?
That's the conundrum right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really to be aware and to be engaged can be very disheartening. And so to find the sort of strength and the positivity to be, to have that activate you in a positive direction, it's so tricky. How do you knowing you for a while, you're one of the more positive people I know, Leah. How do you do that? What to you? I'm sure a lot of it is innate, but what are the things that you do throughout the day that keep your spirit up?
I talk to my parents every day.
Nice.
That's a huge definite soul thing that really helps bring in the positivity, because they're both super positive people. Like even through their challenges, they both just their general way of being is to have a positive outlook and to not dwell on the things that aren't good, but rather look forward to the things that are. And so, yeah, they definitely play a huge role of that. I would definitely say that it's within me, but as a daily practice, I think it's definitely coming from gratitude for being able to live the life that I have, and recognizing that so many people have not had those opportunities, and wanting to create opportunities for others to have the possibility to chase their dreams. Mm-hmm. I think that has definitely been a critical part of it, is that most of the work that I've done and most of the life that I've lived has been in pursuit of my dreams. Mm-hmm. And that's really to enjoy the most I can out of life. I haven't really lived for the next 5 years. I've lived for now.
Yeah.
And I might regret that in 20 years, but I'm having a good time now.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
It's been so great talking. Before we fully sign off, anything that I'm going off of what you wrote me, and mm-hmm. we naturally found our way, I think, to everything. But is there anything that we've missed that you want to get across?
I think I would just like to say thank you to every woman that has courageously lived her life in pursuit of knowing that she's worth it, and that she's capable, and that she's believed in herself, that she can do whatever it is that she believes that she can do. I think that there's a great rise that will bring women in tune with men, to be able to work together, to solve and to create and whatnot. And I feel like we're really much on the rise.
Yeah, I feel that way.
Of that. And that goes with huge admiration for women that have fought the good fight and have gone against, lifetimes and thousands of years
yeah.
of challenges.
Yeah.
And we've arrived to an amazing point in time that I think we're ready to work together.
I like this. Thank you, Leah.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie.
Soundings is brought to you by the Surfers Journal and is produced by me, Jamie Brisick, and Jonathan Shiflett. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Our theme song is Give Me a Wave by Oscar Matsumiya and Paz Lenchantin. The Surfers Journal is a reader-supported publication made possible by sponsorship from FCS, Finisterre, Howler Brothers, Outerknown, Patagonia, Rainbow Sandals, Vans, and Yeti. The journal is published bi-monthly. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to visit surfersjournal.com and subscribe. This episode of Soundings is presented by Costa Sunglasses, the badge of the explorer. For over 40 years and counting, Costa has remained steadfast in their dedication to not only crafting the most durable, functional, and long-lasting eyewear, but in protecting our waterways and natural resources. Whether you're on the back deck scanning for yellowtail, eyeing a set swinging wide at an empty point, camped out on a bluff at the end of a rotted two-track, or anywhere and everywhere in between, Costas are built to help you see what's out there. Head over to costadelmar.com today to find just the right pair for you, no matter where the water takes you. Thank you for listening to Soundings, and until next time.